She was forced out of the village after her husband died, until his brother took her in. They said it was her fault he died. The moment the last breath left Matto's lungs, eyes turned toward Awanita with quiet blame. Like her love had cursed him, like her tears were poison, like her presence was a bad spirit summoned to steal men's lives. She stood frozen at the edge of his burial pyre, fingers trembling around the feather he had gifted her on their wedding day, while the fire devoured the only man who had ever called her my strength. Her heart burned long after the smoke cleared, but not one soul reached for her hand when she fell to her knees. Not even his mother. By dusk, her mat was gone from the lodge. By sunrise, the village elders had spoken in hushed tones, and the verdict was made clear without words. Her husband's death had unsettled the balance, and she could no longer stay. No formal exile was spoken, but when she reached for water, the jug was tipped away. When she sat by the fire, the women turned their backs. Children were called inside when she passed. They wanted her to leave without the shame of banishment, but with every glance, every silence, they carved the order into her skin. So she left, barefoot, wrapped in the same deer-hide cloak her husband once wrapped around her shoulders on their coldest night together. She did not cry, not anymore. She walked toward the woods beyond the burial mounds, where owls called warnings and shadows moved with hunger. But she did not fear death. She had already met him when Matto's hand slipped from hers and never returned. The sky was bruised purple when she stumbled near a creek, too tired to move, too empty to care. That's when he stepped from the trees, tall, broad like his brother, but eyes colder, sharper. Ayoka's brother-in-law, Takota. He had left the village years ago after a dispute with the elders. He had not even returned for Matto's death. Rumors said he walked with wolves, that he followed a stranger's path, one not blessed by the tribe. She tried to stand, but her legs failed. She expected him to walk away. Instead, he crouched down beside her, his face unreadable. "They sent you out," he said. Not a question. She nodded. "You didn't fight back?" She shook her head. "Why?" "There was no one left to fight for." Takota looked away, jaw tight. A silence stretched between them like a taut bowstring. Then he reached out his hand, not in pity, not in command, but in a gesture of quiet alliance. "Then come," he said, his voice low. "I didn't fight for Matto when I should have. Let me stand for what he left behind." She didn't speak. She placed her hand in his. The moment she did, a hawk screeched overhead, sharp, sudden, almost like a warning. But she didn't pull away, and neither did he. The forest held secrets, and so did he. Takota's camp was not what she expected. It was neither wild nor savage, but carefully constructed between two old pines, where the sun broke through just enough to warm the ground, and the stream nearby sang quietly, as if it, too, had chosen silence over judgment. Awanita sat near the fire, watching him move with purpose, placing dried meat over coals, stacking wood, checking snares. He spoke little, but never with coldness. She noticed his eyes lingered on the wedding feather still clutched in her hand. Yet he never asked about it. That first night she slept curled beneath a bear hide, the sounds of the forest her only lullaby, and when she woke screaming from dreams of flames and funeral songs, he was already sitting by the fire, eyes open, waiting. "I thought you were angry at him," she said the next morning, unable to keep the words in. "You never came back, not for the wedding, not for the burial." Takota didn't flinch. "I was angry. Not at him, at them." He tossed another log into the fire. "Matto stayed. I left. We both made choices. I just never thought his would kill him. They think mine did." "I know." His voice didn't carry comfort. It carried clarity, like stone placed on soft ground. "Do you think I killed him?" she whispered. He turned to her slowly. "No." She waited for more, but that was all he gave. Yet, in that one word, something inside her loosened. Days passed, measured by chores and quiet meals. She learned how he spoke to the forest, with gestures, with patience. He showed her how to check traps, how to listen to the rhythm of wind before gathering water, how to spot healing roots hidden beneath the frost. Each lesson was a brick in a strange, quiet rebuilding of herself. Still, she wondered why he had taken her in. What debt did he feel? Or was it guilt? Then, one evening, as clouds gathered heavy and low, Dakota returned with a wound slicing down his arm. She rushed to him, tearing her old cloak to press against the blood. "You should have let me come," she said angrily. "You think I can't help?" He winced, but didn't pull away. "I didn't want them to see you yet." Her heart froze. "Them?" I went back. He looked at her, pain both from the wound and something deeper. "The elders. I asked why they cast you out. I wanted to know what lie they told to make themselves feel righteous. And they fear you." She blinked. "Why?" "Because Maddo told them something before he died. Something about what you saw that night." Awanita's breath caught. The night before Maddo died, he had returned from the woods terrified, whispering of shadows moving where no man should walk, of spirits lingering in the trees. She thought it was fever. She thought he imagined it. She never told anyone. "They said he mentioned your name, that you witnessed it too. They think you were cursed by it." Dakota leaned in, voice low. "What did you see, Awanita?" She looked into the fire, the memory rising like smoke. "I saw something standing over him. Not man, not beast, watching." He nodded slowly. "Then it's time you knew what it really was." The thing that watched him die was not a spirit, but a warning. She had never spoken it aloud before. That night haunted her in fragments. Moonlight filtered through trees, Maddo's frantic breathing, and then a shape darker than shadow standing just beyond the clearing, unmoving, watching. Not with hunger, not with rage, but with knowing. She had convinced herself it was fear playing tricks. Now, hearing Dakota say he believed her, the memory sharpened like flint in her mind. "You think it was real?" she asked, her voice small, almost afraid of being heard by the forest itself. Dakota stood, wrapping his wounded arm with ash root and deer gut. "It was real, but it wasn't meant to harm him. It was a warning, and he didn't listen." Awanita rose to her feet, heart pounding. "What was it warning him of?" Dakota walked past her and pointed up toward the northern ridge. "There's an old trail, nearly forgotten, called the Bone Path. Our ancestors sealed it off generations ago after something came through, something that should have stayed buried. Maddo was searching for elk and crossed it without knowing. He saw what waited there. You saw it too." She shook her head. "But why blame me?" "Because Maddo tried to speak out. He told them the seals were breaking, that something old was returning. The elders panicked. If the people knew, fear would spread. So they turned it against him. And when he died, you became the easy scapegoat." Her legs nearly gave out, not from disbelief, but from the weight of understanding. "So they buried the truth with him." "And tried to bury you too," Dakota said darkly. "But I won't let that happen again." She stared into the fire, the flames dancing like ancient spirits, whispering forgotten stories. "What now?" He stepped closer. "We find the Bone Path. We see if the seals truly broke. If they have, we warn those who will listen, and protect those who won't." The next morning, before the mist had lifted from the ground, they left Dakota's camp behind. Awanita carried nothing but a knife, a pouch of dried roots, and her husband's wedding feather tied around her wrist. Dakota led with silent certainty, moving like someone who had once called these woods home and still remembered the language of the land. The journey was not without danger. A mountain lion trailed them for hours, only deterred by fire ash and a sharp cry Dakota uttered in a tongue older than hers. By the second night, they reached a clearing lined with stones. Awanita stopped, heart tightening. "This is it," she said. Dakota nodded. "Bone Path." The trees here grew in unnatural spirals, bark scarred as if clawed by unseen hands. The wind didn't move, yet the air felt restless. She knelt by a stone and brushed away the moss. Symbols carved deep, the old language of her grandmother, one she had only seen in ritual. "Do you know what it says?" she whispered. Yes, Dakota said, voice low. It says, "He who breaks the sleep will wake the hunger." Awanita turned to him. And Matto broke it. No, Dakota said. Someone else did. Matto only saw it. In the silence that followed, something rustled deeper in the woods. Not a deer, not a fox, but something that moved with intelligence, as if it knew it was being watched. Awanita slowly reached for her knife. "We're not alone," she said. Dakota's jaw clenched. "We were never alone." The bones were marked with the names they shouldn't have known. They didn't sleep that night, not really. Dakota built the fire higher, its flames rising in protest against the heavy stillness that pressed around them. Awanita sat with her back to the stone marker, her knife gripped tight, eyes scanning the tree line. Whatever watched them didn't reveal itself again, but it also didn't leave. The air felt like it was holding its breath. At dawn, Dakota knelt beside one of the boundary stones and pulled a carved bone from beneath the moss. Awanita recoiled. "That's human," he nodded solemnly. "This place, they didn't just seal something away. They fed it, in secret, over generations." Her breath hitched. "What do you mean, fed it?" He turned the bone in his hands. On its surface were symbols, burnt into the surface with precision, but not just symbols, names. Her heart stopped. One of the names etched there was Matto. "No," she whispered, stepping forward. "He's only been gone for weeks. How could his name already be here?" Dakota's voice was stone. "Because someone in the village already offered him." She shook her head violently. "No, no one would." "Someone did, and it wasn't just him." He pulled another bone, then another, each marked with a name, some familiar, others older, forgotten. "These aren't random deaths. These are sacrifices." Awanita stared at the pile, bile rising in her throat. "They made us believe he died of fever. They made me think I brought it on him." Dakota looked up, his eyes dark with restrained fury. "They made you believe a lie so they could keep peace bought with blood. That's why they feared you. You were the witness that wasn't meant to survive." A sudden gust of wind tore through the clearing, sending ashes flying and extinguishing part of the fire. Awanita stood fast. "What do we do now?" Dakota's jaw was set. "We take the truth back to the people." She hesitated. "They won't believe us." "Then we give them something they can't deny." He pulled a weathered pouch from his coat and poured out several small stones. They glowed faintly, fragments from the original seal. "These were once part of the barrier. We return them to the village and show them they're broken." "And if they still turn against us?" she asked. "Then we turn them toward war." They buried the marked bones beneath a fresh cairn, not to hide them, but to protect what remained of those betrayed. As they moved deeper into the bone path, Awanita noticed the forest begin to shift, trees growing farther apart, the earth becoming cracked, brittle. Dakota crouched and brushed dust from a massive stone slab buried half in the earth. This was no tribal carving. It was older, deeper, almost unnatural. She knelt beside it and traced the symbol at its center. "I've seen this in dreams," she whispered. "Matto drew it in the dirt once, before he died. He said it kept coming to him." Dakota nodded. "It's the mark of the sleeper, the thing buried beyond the seals. And if the seals are breaking, it's waking." The earth groaned beneath them, faint but undeniable. Awanita stood, heart hammering. "How much time do we have?" "Not enough," Dakota said, already moving. "We have to reach the village before nightfall. If they won't listen, then we show them what silence has brought." She returned not as a widow, but as a warning. They arrived at dusk, just as the last of the sun bled behind the hills, casting the village in hues of ash and rust. Awanita walked behind Dakota, her head high, her wrist still wrapped in the feather Matto gave her. The guards at the outer ridge stepped forward, spears crossing. They weren't expecting her, and they certainly weren't expecting Dakota. "You were told never to return," one said. Dakota didn't slow. "Then they should have sealed the path better." The elder council had gathered for evening fire when the two of them entered the square. Conversations died mid-sentence. Mothers pulled children away. The chief's gaze sharpened as he stepped forward. "Why is she here?" he demanded. "She's not one of us anymore." Awanita felt the sting, but this time she didn't flinch. Dakota spoke before she could. "She's the only one who saw what Matto saw, and the only one with the courage to bring it back." The chief sneered. "You both speak of ghosts and curses. Matto died from sickness. He was offered," Awanita said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "His name was carved into the bones at the bone path, alongside others, old ones, young ones, all offered in secret." A ripple went through the crowd. The chief laughed bitterly. "You expect us to believe this widow, cursed by death and madness?" Dakota stepped forward and threw the broken seal fragments at the chief's feet. "Then believe these." Gasps followed. The village shaman knelt, picking up the stones. His face turned pale. "These are from the outer ward. They glow only when cracked." "And cracked they are," Dakota said. "The thing you've kept sleeping is waking." The chief looked to the elders, some now visibly shaken. "No one has fed the path since before my time." "Then who carved Matto's name?" Awanita asked. No answer. "Who placed his bones beneath the marker before his spirit even passed fully?" Silence stretched thin and sharp. Then a voice broke it. Matto's mother. Her eyes welled with tears, her hands shaking. "He came to me the night he died, told me what he saw. I told the elders, I thought I was protecting us." Awanita's lips parted. "You sent me away." The old woman dropped her gaze. "They said if you stayed, the sleeper would rise." "I was afraid." The village was no longer silent. It was breaking apart in murmurs, in fear, in guilt. Dakota turned to the crowd. "We don't need apologies. We need warriors. Tonight we rebuild the seals, or we lose everything." "And if it's already too late?" someone called out. Awanita stepped forward, voice stronger than it had ever been. "Then let it rise, and find us ready." That night, by torchlight, the village stirred like it hadn't in years. Men and women carried stones. Elders brought ancient maps from beneath their lodges. The shaman chanted over herbs not touched in decades. And at the center of it all stood Awanita, not as a widow, not as an exile, but as a bearer of truth. Dakota stood beside her, his gaze on the forest. "You brought them back," she said. "No," he replied, eyes narrowing at the distant ridge. "You did. But something else is coming too." A howl rose then, deep, guttural, not from any beast they knew. It didn't echo, it lingered, as if the night itself had exhaled. The sleeper sent its first shadow. That night, the firelight flickered like a heartbeat against the lodge walls as the villagers worked, their hands fueled by fear and urgency. Stones were lifted, old chants repeated, ancient symbols re-etched into the ground. But nothing could erase the sound they'd heard, the long, unholy howl that bent the night and chilled even the warriors to stillness. Awanita moved among them with quiet purpose. Her presence no longer met with silence, but with glances of awe, even respect. She stopped only when she reached Dakota, who was drawing a protective circle near the eastern ridge, his wounded arm redressing itself with little care. "We need to rest," she said gently. "Even spirits sleep." "This one doesn't," he muttered. "It dreams awake." She looked out toward the darkness beyond the firelight. "What do you know that you haven't told me?" Dakota paused, his hands smeared in ash. "I saw it once," he said. "Before Matto, before I left the village, I was just a boy." Her breath caught. "You never told anyone?" "Who would have believed me?" His voice was thick with regret. "I wandered too far, found bones twisted like knots, trees bent toward a hollow in the earth that bled light. I felt it watching me. It didn't chase. It waited." "Waited for what?" He looked at her. "For someone like Matto. Someone brave enough to cross, someone close enough to carry part of it back." A scream tore through the silence then, sharp, human, nearby. They ran, past the fire, past the elders, into the trees beyond the last boundary. There, slumped at the foot of a blood-marked stone, was Waya, the youngest scout. His chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. His eyes, wide and wild, stared at nothing. "What did this?" Awanita asked, kneeling. Waya choked. "Not a creature, a man." "A man?" Dakota asked, frowning. Waya nodded, trembling. But his face, it was like wearing skin, wrong, too smooth, like clay not finished. He clutched Awanita's wrist with sudden strength. "It whispered Mato's name." The air turned cold. "He's come back," she whispered. Dakota shook his head. "No, something came wearing him." Waya's breath slowed, then stopped. Awanita closed his eyes, hands shaking. "This wasn't just a warning," Dakota said. "It's claiming the ones who knew. First Mato, now Waya." Awanita rose, fury rising like fire in her veins. "Then it's not after the village, it's after the truth. And we're the last ones carrying it." Behind them, a faint glow appeared among the trees, pale blue, almost soft. But as it moved, they saw it wasn't light. It was a figure, tall, walking slow, silent, a face they recognized, but wrong. Mato's eyes, Mato's walk, but the expression was blank, hollow, like someone else puppeted the skin. "Run," Dakota said. Awanita didn't move. "I want to see what it wants." The figure stopped. A voice like wind through bones echoed from its lips. "You were supposed to forget." "I never will," she answered. "Then your blood will remember for you." Dakota pulled her back just as the figure lunged. Not fast, but with purpose, like time itself bent for its strike. They ran, heartbeats louder than footsteps. Behind them, nothing chased. But the words followed. A stranger wore her husband's face, but his soul was screaming though. They didn't stop running until their legs failed beneath them, and the trees thinned into low rock beds near the river's bend. Awanita collapsed onto her knees, gasping, eyes darting into the darkness behind them. Nothing. No footsteps, no sound. But she could still feel it. Him, whatever it was that wore Mato's skin like a crude mask. Dakota paced beside her, fists clenched, every muscle tight with fury and fear. "It wasn't Mato," he said. "It couldn't be, but it knew things only he would have known." Awanita nodded slowly. "It whispered the first words he ever told me, on our wedding night." Her voice cracked. "No one else heard them." Dakota knelt beside her, lowering his voice. "That thing is feeding on memory, on emotion, wearing the faces of those it's claimed. It's not hunting bodies, it's hunting truth." "Then it came for me," she said bitterly. "And it's not finished. We have to make sure the next time it comes, we don't run." "How?" "We set a trap, not for its body, for its story." Awanita frowned. "What does that mean?" "It can wear faces. I've seen that. But it can't make new stories. It has to steal them. If we give it a story to chase, a false one, it will follow. It doesn't know how to tell its own." Awanita's mind raced. "A false memory?" "Exactly. A lie strong enough to draw it in, lure it out, and then we burn the memory at the seal's mouth. Cut its thread. That's dangerous. What if it finds the truth before we burn the lie?" Dakota's gaze hardened. "Then it becomes more than just a shadow. It becomes him." She swallowed. "What if it already has?" That night, while the village braced for whatever horror might crawl out of the woods, Awanita sat by the elders' fire, surrounded by those who once cast her out. She told them a story. One no one had ever heard. "Mato told me of a blade," she began, weaving fiction into her voice. "Forged from obsidian buried beneath the bone path. He said if he ever fell, I must find it, that it holds the power to end the sleeper." The elders leaned in, some skeptical, some hopeful. One whispered, "We never forged such a thing. He said only I would know where it was hidden," she replied calmly. "And only I can draw it." The trap was laid, and she knew it. Later, under moonlight, she and Dakota returned to the bone path. There, near the cairn where Mato's name had been found, she dug a hollow with bare hands and placed a crude black blade carved from charcoal and stone, a symbol of the lie. "This is bait," she whispered. If it believes this can kill it, it will come. Dakota nodded. And when it comes, we burn what it wants. They didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. And when the trees stirred just before dawn and the earth cracked with a breathless moan, Awanita stood holding the false blade in one hand and her truth in the other. She stared into her husband's eyes, but something else looked back. The trees opened like a curtain drawn by invisible hands, and there he stood, or what remained of him. Matto's body, unchanged since the funeral pyre, stood upright in the moonlight, the skin impossibly untouched by fire, the hair too still, the breath too absent. But his eyes, they were the worst of all. Awanita had known those eyes like her own heartbeat, soft, warm, foolishly brave. Now they gleamed flat and glassy, as if someone were staring from behind a painted window. The false blade trembled in her hand, the lie it represented feeling suddenly small against the vast, unholy truth before her. Dakota stood at her side, unmoving, whispering words in the old tongue under his breath. The figure stepped forward, not with human weight but like smoke caught in skin. "You mourned him deeply," the voice said, using Matto's mouth. "Enough to call me back." "You are not him," Awanita said. "You are what murdered him." The thing tilted its head. "He invited me in. When he saw beyond the path, when the fear broke his name in half, I whispered that I could make him strong again. He agreed. He wept as I entered." Awanita's stomach twisted. "You're a parasite. I am memory. I am hunger. I am the silence after grief. You are not welcome here. And yet here I stand, in the skin of your greatest love." She stepped forward. "Then I take you back to where you came from." The false Matto looked down at the blade. "That thing cannot harm me. It is a shadow forged in lies." "Good," she said, eyes fierce, "because it was never meant to hurt you, only distract you." From behind, Dakota hurled a bundle of crushed feather root into the air, herbal powder soaked in sacred oil. As the creature turned, Awanita set the blade ablaze and drove it into the ground at the cairn's base. Fire shot up, not from the false weapon, but from the earth itself, reacting to the offering of belief. A circle of flames erupted, encasing the creature within the false boundary. The thing screamed, not with pain, but with fury. The sky above it dimmed. Shadows pulled from the trees, reaching toward the flames but unable to cross. "You cannot trap what does not die," it howled. "You cannot bind what lives in sorrow." Awanita stepped closer to the ring. "Then I will bury you in it." The creature clawed at the flames, the illusion of Matto's face melting like wax under heat. Beneath it, the true form pulsed, shapeless, veined with memory and echo. Faces of the dead flickering through its surface like drowned souls screaming from beneath ice. "This is not the end," it hissed. "I am in all grief, in every forgotten name." "Then you'll rot here," Dakota said, throwing the last of the seal stones into the ring. As they struck the ground, the fire turned white-hot. The creature gave one final scream, thousands of voices shrieking in unison, then collapsed into ash. The flames died instantly. Silence returned. Awanita dropped to her knees, shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of surviving. Dakota placed a hand on her shoulder. "You saw him until the very end." She nodded, "But I never looked away." The village greeted her with flowers, but she carried ashes. They returned before dawn, feet dragging through the dewy earth, silence stretched like a burial cloth between them. The village, once cloaked in suspicion and superstition, stirred at their arrival. Torches lit, doors opened, eyes widened, not with scorn this time, but with a fragile kind of reverence. Awanita walked at the front, her hair singed, her fingers blackened with the remains of the creature. Tied around her wrist was the last unburnt feather from Matto's wedding gift, charred at the edges, but still intact. Dakota followed, his wounded arm now wrapped in fresh bark and cloth, blood still seeping through. The chief stepped out from the longhouse, flanked by elders who looked older than they had days ago, as if fear aged them faster than time. "Is it done?" he asked. Awanita stopped before him. "The lie we buried drew it out. The fire sealed it, but the truth remains. It lived here because of silence, because you let it." The chief lowered his gaze. "We believed we were preserving peace." "You preserved fear," Dakota spat. "And fear fed it." The crowd gathered around them, men who once turned their backs, women who had pulled their children away, now watching as though they were witnessing myth walk among them. The shaman stepped forward, laying down a woven blanket. "You were not meant to survive," he said, "but you did, which means something greater waits for you." Awanita said nothing. She knelt and unwrapped a small pouch. Inside were the ashes of the false Matto, gathered after the creature's collapse. She poured them into the wind. "This was not him," she said aloud, "and this will not be me. I won't become a story twisted by others." A hush fell over the crowd. Then, slowly, one by one, villagers came forward, not to speak, but to place tokens at her feet. A flower, a bead, a feather, remnants of apology, of remorse, of slow, rebuilding trust. Matto's mother approached last. Her hands trembled as she extended a necklace, woven with bark fiber and tiny bells once used in childhood dances. "He loved you until the end," she said, tears in her eyes. "I know," Awanita replied, "and I still carry him, but now I carry more." That night, a new fire was lit in the center of the village, not one of mourning, but of renewal. They sang songs not heard in years. Elders recited stories long kept silent, and at the center sat Awanita, the woman they had cast out, now surrounded by those who once feared her. Dakota sat beside her, not as a warrior or an outcast, but as something else entirely. "You should rest," he said. "There will be more to fight one day, but not tonight." She looked up at the stars. "I don't know if I can ever rest." "Then I'll stand until you can." She smiled faintly, a crack in stone that let warmth through. "You think they'll ever tell the truth about what happened?" "No," he said simply. "But that's not your burden anymore. You lived it. That's enough." And for the first time since Matto's death, Awanita believed it might be. They called her widow, witch, curse, but she became their keeper. The moon had waned to a sliver by the time Awanita stood once more at the edge of the bone path. She came alone, not out of pride or recklessness, but because this was something she had to finish herself. Behind her, the village now slept under protection born not from ignorance, but from truth. The seals were remade, the cairns reinforced with the sacred stones. But memory was fragile, and silence crept easily into comfortable places. She wouldn't let them forget again, not while she still drew breath. She knelt and placed a fresh carving into the earth, her fingers bleeding slightly from the effort. It was not a ward, not a trap. It was a marker etched with symbols of her people, yes, but also one new name, Awanita, keeper of memory. Not widow, not curse, not the girl who lost her place, but the woman who gave them back their future. Behind her, footsteps stirred. She didn't turn. She knew them. Dakota emerged from the tree line, carrying a bundle wrapped in elk hide. "I thought I told you to rest," she said. "I did. Then I remembered who you are, and I knew you wouldn't." He knelt beside her, placing the bundle on the ground and unwrapping it slowly. Inside were relics. Matto's bow, a piece of the false blade, ash root, and the last unbroken seal stone. "We bury these," he said, "not to hide them, but to remember what they cost." Awanita nodded, her throat tight. Together they dug a hollow between two stones and lowered the objects in, covering them with earth, with ash, with silence. Then they sat, staring at the place where the creature had once stood. "You know," Dakota said softly, "they'll tell this story wrong." "I expect nothing less," she replied. "They'll say the elders stood brave, that the shaman saw visions, that the seals held strong. And you? They'll say I returned cursed. Or maybe they'll say I never came back at all." He looked at her. So, why did you? Because someone had to. A breeze moved through the trees, cool and clean. Awanita closed her eyes. For the first time in many moons, she did not hear whispers in the wind. Only peace. What will you do now? Dakota asked. She opened her eyes slowly. Stay near the path. Listen for lies. And if the earth trembles again, I'll be ready. He smiled, not out of humor, but pride. Then I'll build my camp closer. She stood, wiping dirt from her hands. I don't need guarding. I'm not guarding you, he said. I'm guarding them from ever forgetting what you did. The sun broke then, golden light piercing through the canopy like a promise. The village would wake soon. Life would return to crops, to weaving, to hunting, and maybe, in time, someone would find the marker she carved. Maybe they'd ask who Awanita was. Maybe they'd lie, or maybe, just maybe, they'd remember her as she was, not as a woman left behind by death, but as the one who walked through it, faced the face of grief itself, and came back holding the light.